All right. So it looks like we're live. Maybe we can just give people a few minutes to trickle in before we get started with the agenda. But I guess for starters, how's everyone's day going?
I took the fattest nap. It was really, really good.
Mine's been interesting. I'm in LA right now, so there's a 3-hour difference, and I've been trying to operate in EST. And then last night, I was going out with a couple of friends, and by the time we came back, it was 4 a.m. in my time zone.
Oh no!
A little bit sleep deprived.
Yeah, that's really starting the workday early in Eastern time if you think about it.
Yeah, I think I probably should have switched the schedule if I was smart. Did not plan ahead.
Well, thank you for joining us on so little sleep. Very admirable. Cool. Well, I think we can get started then. So welcome everyone joining us for the Women in Entrepreneurship panel. Let's begin with a quick round of introductions from all the panelists. Let's go in alphabetical order. Introduce yourself, your startup, any previous education background or current education background, and any achievements you'd like to share. So let's start with Eileen.
Yeah, great. Being in alphabetical order, it's either hit or miss with me. It's either always first or always last, but it's okay. So my name is Eileen Agata. My startup is called Be Blended, and essentially we are a SaaS-enabled marketplace that connects Black women to hairstylists worldwide. We're very focused on tech, and so that's what we're dabbling in right now. I am a recent engineering alumni graduate from Waterloo in environmental engineering, and I'm actually starting my master's in business entrepreneurship and technology this September at Waterloo, but part-time, so I can work on Be Blended full-time. Something life-related, I guess. Honestly, just staying alive, I think is an achievement. Oh my. I guess honestly, maybe just graduating, getting something done, building a team for Be Blended. Started off as like a solo entrepreneur, still am, but I have a team of 5 now, which is really cool. And just changing the lives of those who use our product, I think is a pretty cool achievement.
Nice. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Ariel. I'm currently a 3rd year at McGill. And my startup is Pecco Produce. So if anyone is watching this and they're kind of based in like the Vancouver area, what we do is we deliver the imperfect fruits and vegetables to your door. So our mission is to reduce as much food waste as possible in the upstream supply chain and also promote access to really heavily discounted, affordable, healthy fruits and vegetables. So a big achievement that we had is we launched in like on May 31st. And I think since then, I've probably eaten like upwards of 40 zucchinis. There was like this one week where I literally had like 2 zucchinis a day. I got really, really creative with it. I made like zucchini, like lasagna. So instead of like pasta, zucchinis. They're just really, really watery. So if anyone does it, dry it out. I'm too lazy.
Hey everyone, it's nice to virtually meet you. So my name is Eileen. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Lumaki Labs, and I'm actually currently still a student at the University of Waterloo. So I'm in my 3B term of management engineering, and I'm also taking a minor in entrepreneurship. And the startup that I'm working on right now, as I mentioned, is called Lumaki Labs, and our mission is to help companies unlock early talent. So the product that we had built about a year ago now is actually an onboarding and management SaaS platform to help employers better onboard and engage their students in a remote setting. So I guess in terms of an achievement that I can think of is we actually launched our MVP earlier this year in January. And so to date, we've been testing with around 200 or so students. So it's been really cool, I guess, just seeing the insights and I guess how people are navigating this new online or virtual world.
That's super exciting. I met Eileen back when I think right when you were launching, so it's very cool to hear that update. Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. I'm the founder of CoGem. I was studying management engineering at the University of Waterloo. across my co-ops was working as a software engineer. Basically found I was not super happy with the tools in the management of software engineering space, so decided to create one. What CoGEM is basically a platform to support collaboration within software teams, so helping engineers and managers run their one-on-ones, adding a little bit of analytics behind those conversations. And I guess notable achievements. So I am not currently a student in Waterloo anymore. I stepped out as a 2020 Teal Fellow. And then shortly following that, we raised our pre-seed, which I guess would be our kind of two highlights.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for the exciting intros. My name is Christie Gao. I am the founder of SoGal Waterloo, an initiative aiming to bridge the diversity and inclusion gap in entrepreneurship and venture capital. I'm a computer science student here at Waterloo, and I'm honored to be moderating the panel today. So without further ado, we can jump right into the juicy questions for tonight. So kind of starting off, for everyone, how did you come across your idea and what led you to become a founder? In no particular order.
I can start off because I kind of touched on it a little bit. So when I was studying management engineering, the places I was interning were generally larger organizations. So Apple and Uber are kind of the big names there. And so working with my managers, I was always surprised when we had our one-on-one conversations. There just wasn't a lot of tools to support kind of that internal team operation. And then, so I started working on CoGEM really as a passion project. And in 2019, Waterloo has this really cool concept competition, the 5K pitch. And so more as a learning experience than anything else, I decided to sign up and was lucky enough to end up winning it. And so that's what kind of introduced me to the world of startups. And then it's been a bit of an adventure since, but it's got to take it kind of from what was a passion project into what I'd say is an actual company now.
Yeah, I would say my journey is kind of similar to Stephanie's in a sense that my journey in entrepreneurship did start at Waterloo. It's a little bit of a weird path in a sense that I probably got started in 2018 and I kind of accidentally fell into it just by seeing a problem around me. I actually didn't know what entrepreneurship was. Like if you asked me in high school or even like coming into university, like what it was, like my only preconceived notion of it was like men in suits and like just general like business essentially. But I guess what I learned over time is that, entrepreneurship really at the end of the day is solving a problem. And for me, at least, like making an impact. So I've really been into social entrepreneurship since about 2018 or so when I fell into this problem space of women in STEM. So my first venture was called Fem in STEM, and it was more on the nonprofit side. But as I started to learn more about entrepreneurship through that experience and go through different accelerators and things like that, as well as go on different co-op experiences, I actually found a new passion towards the future of work. And so last year, when everything was starting to shift online and all this craziness is happening in the education space, myself and my team really wanted to be a part of it. And so we actually started focusing in on this space, and that's kind of how Lumaki Labs was born. Is I guess a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, at PECO, we're very, very mission driven. So at the very beginning, we didn't even start as like anywhere near where we are now. We started off as a pantry management data analytic app, so like tracking expiry dates. And like at the core, all we wanted to do was reduce food waste. So me and my co-founder, we did so many like interviews across basically the entire food supply chain. And then we realized that we couldn't really solve the problem of food waste in like a household level. And like, it's very minimal to begin with compared to like how much is wasted on like a higher like upstream level. And that's where we decided to start focusing in on. So we started with something that we wanted to solve. And then we dug around and asked everybody in the space about like things that they were going against. And then we decided to almost exploit a weakness in the chain where so much like food was being wasted that could have just been eaten at a very discounted price. Yeah, it's fun.
Cool.
I don't know if anyone noticed we went in reverse order. Just throwing that out there. But for me, oh gosh, We Blended started off from a personal problem that I experienced. So I, with Waterloo, like ENGE, there's co-op. And so I was on a co-op term in Ottawa I remember getting there, figuring out my rent and my transport, everything was sorted out. But I didn't think I needed to worry about like a hairstylist or anything. And so I did a quick Google search, found like 15 different hair salons in like a 2-kilometer radius, so really tight. Walked into every single one of them, and all of them turned me away. So not because they don't like me or anything, but they didn't know how to work on my Afro curly hair texture. And so it got me thinking, that's so strange. There's lots of Black women in Ottawa. Like, where are they going? And so I had to do the whole awkward thing of going up to them, tapping them on the shoulder and asking, okay, like, where do you go to do your hair, get your hair done? And the story was, oh, a friend of a friend, of a sister of an aunt who lives over there. And so I learned that there's this whole market of Black hairstylists or hairstylists that know how to work on specific hair types that is not have a strong online footprint. So I went back to Waterloo, couldn't sit on my hands anymore. I was like, this is a weird problem. And it was 2017 at the time. And I was like, yo, we've been on the moon. Like, I should be able to find a hairstylist. And so from similar to, I think, Stephanie's story and Eileen's story with like concept and pitching and getting involved at UW, I went through an incubator called Greenhouse, which is just a social impact incubator at University of Waterloo. They encouraged me to pitch, and I was like, pitch, what exactly is that? And formalized something, did a lot of research, ended up reaching out to over 2,000 Black women. They all said the same thing and said, okay, I'm not crazy. The data speaks for itself. And that's kind of where the ball started rolling. I realized, oh, this can be something. Oh, it's not just a passion. I can add technology to it. So fast forward now, we back then, I was 2018, it was a team of 1, me, myself, and I. And now a team of 5. And we're really focusing on the product dev, so our software, just enhancing the business quality for Black hairstylists and just the overall Black consumer demographic in the beauty industry. So that, I'm telling you, similar to a lot of the panelists here, I wasn't aware of entrepreneurship, didn't know anything about venture capital, startup, angel investors, all these words I was never aware of. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon finding Be Blended.
How did you come up with the name Be Blended?
Oh man, that wasn't part of the questions. No, I'm kidding. Be Blended, gosh. It was before I even like thought of names and everything. I was just thinking about inclusion. I was thinking about, oh, like be together. That doesn't work. Be like inclusive. That sounds kind of boring. So, and then I came across like alliteration, like be blended, and just kind of squished that all together. And I just felt like it's not stuck to hair. It's not stuck to anything. It could be anything, just because pivoting happens a lot with startups. And that's kind of how Be Blended was born.
Amazing startup stories to all your startups. So we've heard a few different resources mentioned along the way. Concept, which is a pitching competition at Waterloo, Greenhouse, a social impact accelerator. What are some other resources that you've found along the way that really helped you in the early days? Oh, and the field fellowship as well, of course. And I'm curious as well for you, Ariel, what some of the resources were, as you're the non-Waterloo student in the crowd here.
Yeah, I didn't realize until everyone was saying it. I was like, oh, you dumb, or not dumb, Waterloo. We're part of Next 36, which is like the big student accelerator in Canada. And honestly, I don't go to any of the events, but my co-founder does, and she likes them. And like, I mean, that's a pretty good time. What I like about that program is like, you don't really need an idea to go in. They actually like accept you on like a personality basis. So like if you're really, really passionate about building, they'll take you in and kind of nurture you. This is how I met Eileen, but the Ripple X Fellowship. That's a early stage venture firm in Toronto, and they kind of teach you the startup or the basics of like startup financing. And that's a big part of how I got into venture capital to begin with. And I don't know, like Twitter, I'm big on Twitter. I really like just like meeting people in like the area and just like talking to them. I didn't drink the startup Kool-Aid for a really, really long time until the pandemic. And then the only people that I talked to were online, and just watching people in your vicinity building just really, really inspires you. And it's also really nice to just rant to them, especially when you get like a bunch of terrible like customer service emails. And I'm just like, you know, like you buy ugly vegetables and then get mad that they're ugly, you know, it's just, so there's a lot of like dumb stories that I have where I was just pulling my hair out, and it was so nice to have a community of like-minded people to complain to. But I think wherever you look, as long as you talk to the right people, you'll find your place.
I'm curious. I'm not a good Twitter user. How did you use Twitter, and how are you using it to meet people?
Yeah, I started by like shit posting on Twitter, and it was like I just kind of had it like as a joke. And then a couple of people just thought that was funny, and they brought me into their wing. So I got really, really lucky. Some dude replied, and he had like 6,000 followers, and then suddenly all of his followers were mine. And then from there on, I didn't want to become one of those dumb like thought leaders. I still think that's kind of cringe. So nowadays, if I see someone on my feed and they're talking about something cool, I'll DM them and be like, hey, like, sick. And they'll be like, yeah, sick. And like sometimes you can just ask to schedule like a quick like 10-minute like chat. I feel like it's so like impersonal to be like, yeah, let's talk for like 30 minutes, an hour. I feel like you're just like doing it for the sake of doing it. But like having a quick, like honestly not related to work conversation, that's how you really build those lasting like relationships.
A social media influencer, I see. It kind of moving on to the next question. What's the biggest achievement you've had so far? That we've kind of touched on that earlier. And what are you most proud of, whether big or small?
I guess I can start off. So for me, I kind of mentioned this already a little bit earlier, but I would say for me, probably just shipping our MVP again. I know that's like the first step in the journey, and there's like so much that comes after it. But I feel like, especially as someone in engineering and someone who isn't leading technical development at my company, I always felt a little bit of like imposter syndrome when it came to like working in tech and things like that, which is also why, again, I worked in that problem space before switching over to Lumaki Labs. And so I think for me, it was a really proud moment just because like it's always really cool seeing like all of your work and like research and just all of the hours that you spent now coming to life and now having users on it and getting feedback. So I would say that's probably the biggest achievement, but I guess it was like a general like catch-all one. I think just like getting into entrepreneurship in the first place. I know a lot of like young people get kind of scared when it comes to acting on ideas, or they just don't know where to start. And for me, like I was super, super introverted when I was a kid. Like I couldn't go through drive-throughs in high school because I was like too shy of ordering and stuff like that. So just like seeing how far I came, like based off of like those situations in the past, it makes me feel like proud of, I guess, like the journey along the way.
I mean, I can jump in here too. I would say for me, it's more on like the more little things. I know it's like what's the biggest achievement, but any time that Be Blended affects a person or any of our users is for me a huge like home run. Recently, I or not as often, but quite recently, I've been getting a lot of messages on like LinkedIn or my Facebook or like random places of someone just saying, "Hey, I came across Be Blended, and like I found my hairstylist, and like the UI is so great, and you know the lady that I met at the front desk, she also used Be Blended." And I'm like, "What the heck? That's so cool!" And what I'm realizing is that's that's the tip of the iceberg that actually goes out of their way to tell you that they've used what you're doing and kind of have this feedback story. So for me, that for me is a big achievement. There's so much more that needs to get done. But that really warms my heart every time. And then one other thing is just building our team. So just finding people who are passionate about, social change and, Black hair care can be really hard with technical skills. And so our team is so amazing. Use skills. Sorry if I froze for a second, but I'm so excited that they want to use their skills to be a part of Be Blended. So I'm excited and feel achieved that I'm leading them towards Be Blended. Yeah.
I can jump in. And that's amazing. I think I relate a little to Eileen there. I'd say my biggest achievements and my proudest moments are not the same. The things that I think the biggest thing that makes me proud is kind of looking back at how far we've come from even that kind of initial MVP I built out in my dorm room in university as purely a technical challenge to see. I made it way too complicated. To kind of the first pitch I did at the Concept 5K competition, to kind of the vision that started to form, and then finally we're at the point when it's actually built, and watching people and getting to share that with people and hearing their feedback has been by far the proudest.
Yeah, I just echo exactly what Stephanie said. Like just seeing like the progress. The double-edged like sword of like consumer-facing businesses is you get like dumb customers, like the people in my email, but you also get really, really good ones. There's one guy who's ordered since our very start, like, and it's been like around like 16 like times, like so 16 weeks so far, and like he leaves like the nicest like comments for us, and he's just like, yeah, you guys are doing like great work, love the concept, sharing it with everyone, and like that's the stuff that like warms your heart. And like the fact that we've been able to employ so many people, especially people that look like me and my co-founder, a lot of them are like first-gen immigrants, like people who just came to Canada like less than a couple months ago. And now they're helping us deliver like ugly fruits and vegetables, helping us like pack boxes and stuff. And like, it's just a really, really good time to just, like see everyone being like happy about what they're doing and like being able to also like pay people like living wages, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of heartwarming stories. They're a common theme of making real impact and getting that user feedback. So that's wonderful. To kind of change gears a little bit and get a bit personal, what are some of the lows you've experienced as a founder, either with this venture or previous ventures? And how did you ever overcome those challenges?
I can go with this one to start as like a little like story. Our like pilot went really, really bad. Someone like made a post on Facebook that went viral, and Sang and I had no idea how to fulfill everything, but we just decided to like screw it and just do it. So like we delivered like the worst stuff I've seen in my life. Like it should have just like bad, like rotten food. And like we, in hindsight, like we should have just canceled everything and been like, yeah, you have to wait until next week when we have more like steady supply. But I remember like it was just terrible. Like everyone was clowning us. We got canceled on like Facebook mommy groups. And like that night I did the deliveries myself, and there was like so many of them because we didn't have like a big enough team. And then I remember going home and I drank in my parking lot and like cried myself to sleep. And then nowadays, like looking back on that was like the fattest low that we've ever had. But we've only gotten better, and that now it's just working perfectly, and it's kind of just crazy.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really rough. I can't imagine what going through that was like.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that we kept going from that, like,
Yeah.
I think that really like shows how much you really cared about, the problem.
I guess I can chime in next. So I guess this one's like a little bit more of a personal one. I'm not sure if like anyone else has felt this, but this is actually a realization that I made sometime this year, actually. Quarantine and just being at home kind of gives you a lot of time to think. But I think one of the things that I've realized this year, especially like being a founder and just like being in school and things like that, is that I struggle a lot with like bucketing my identity. Like I feel like I'm either considered like a student or a founder. And I always found that I struggle a little bit with like merging the two, in a sense that, for example, like talking to my friends about like achievements or things that I've done with my startup, like I always felt kind of uncomfortable, not because of them, but because of my, like, I don't know, my own thoughts and opinions. I just didn't want other people to feel like they weren't doing enough or whatever. And at the same time, on the other side of things, like with my network of like founder friends, I guess, I never wanted to be seen as like distracted or like I wasn't as committed as them because they were like further along and, I'm still in school. So I'd say for me, like that's been one of the biggest challenges like recently for me, is just like trying to balance the two and try to just like figure things out. I think especially as a student founder, it's like there's like so many different things happening at once that you're kind of just juggling so much. So I'd say for me, that's what I've been like working through. I think like, you know, it's very easy to say like, I don't care what people think or like whatever. So I think for me, like that's what I'm going to continue working on and kind of like thinking through. So I don't really have like a resolution or like a solution to that right now, but I guess that's just kind of like part of the journey. And like, who knows, maybe in like a future panel or like whatever, I'll have the solution. But as of right now, that's, I guess, the situation.
I would say for me, and also disclaimer, my internet's a little shaky, so I might freeze. But I would say for me, well, a huge challenge is definitely transitioning from full-time student to full-time entrepreneurship. And I would say mainly because of the identity piece, similar to what Eileen said, but just kind of really understanding like, okay, so my own well-being is reliant on this thing that has a 90% fail rate, essentially. Um, hard days and good days. Yeah, I saw this video about Be Blended. It was so amazing. Like, where are you guys at? And like, we're really behind schedule. Those are hard moments for me as a founder, especially leading a team. I would say because we're so focused on software dev and we're a tech company, and I, come from an environmental engineering background, yes, technical, but not in the software realm of things, I can't move the needle with my own skills. So really just completely relying on my team and knowing that I can't move the development quicker has been hard. But they're an amazing team, and bumps in the roads do happen. But it's just a constant reminder that, when things actually don't go to plan, it's normal. But for me, I beat myself up on it quite often, and I'm working on it. But I would say that's been really, really challenging. Also, just how many people say no. That is so hard at times. Even if you get like 90 yeses and you get 2 no's, you're just like, oh my gosh, why is this? Like, you just start breaking down and not realizing how important it is that you got those 90 yeses. And I know it's human nature to kind of pinpoint the hard stuff and stay there. Yes, you can get a lot of feedback from those 2 no's that you got, and really understand their mentality behind it. But I've been really trying to focus on the positive, the people who do care, because those are the ones that will, evangelize your startup. Similar to Ariel, what you're saying about 16 orders, man, and all those nice comments, like that should definitely warm your heart. So those are the challenges that I'm constantly facing and have faced in the past.
I guess I'll wrap this up. So I really like what Eileen said there, especially about I think doing a startup is a roller coaster. The highs are incredibly high and the lows can be pretty awful, and it's constantly bouncing between the two. And so I also have the tendency, if there's 10 things happening and one of them's going bad, my attention usually focuses on the bad thing. And a kind of an example of that would be when we were fundraising for our pre-seed, you talk to a lot of different people and you do hear no a lot. And so sometimes you kind of want to focus on, especially with VC, sometimes when you get that no, you don't get the feedback of it. They just say no, talk to me when you're further along kind of thing. And so it can be difficult to just move on from that, push it behind you and keep going forward. But that's been, I guess, thankfully a skill I've managed to develop. So now it's a lot easier facing rejection and kind of being able to accept it and move forward faster.
I guess as a follow-up, how do you all practice self-care as a founder and dealing with those challenges?
I can start us off. I think for me, the first thing that I typically do is just have like a really strong self-realization that I'm choosing to do this. Like, nobody's forcing me to do any of this. And similar to what Stephanie said, like the highs are really high and the lows are really low, but I really chose to do this. So that's one. Two, I find that I just take one task one day at a time. the best way for me is definitely spending time with people who care and people who I can rant to. Of course, you have your team, but sometimes it could be, you kind of want nothing to do with your startup at the moment to kind of be around people who you can just be normal with and not just be consumed by it. Walks are really cool. That's what I like to do. I'm based in Toronto now, but I frequent Waterloo quite often. Going on walks, I started swimming recently, just like being around folks that are just like normal, cool dude people, and just really be having an escape in a sense, not necessarily to like be free from everything, but just kind of realize that you're this little speck in this big world and like you're making a difference, but it's also okay to take a break. That's been really, those are also super important. That's what I do at least.
Yeah, I think what Eileen said, like having a clear boundary, like it sometimes feels like your startup is like your life, but like just know that you have a lot more going for you than just like your company, and like making sure that you have like, you know, things to do outside of it, and just ensuring you have like, I don't know, a really good like a support system that will always just be there for you is really great. Sang's my co-founder. We block off times in our schedules so we can just chill out. The other day, like me and my friends, like Sang was like grinding, so we bought her like a 90-minute massage, and then we like put it in her calendar, and then she didn't even notice it until the day of, and we're like, haha, surprise. But little things like that kind of keep you going, especially when you have a really good group of like friends.
Yeah, and I guess like to build off of that, I think like not isolating yourself. I think it's really important to have like a network of like both founder friends and like normal friends, because the one good thing is when you're friends with other founders, like you know that they're going through the same struggle. Like even if it's a completely different industry or idea, like the struggle is somewhat similar. Like each of these like panelists here, I have met at like different stages in my entrepreneurial journey, and it's just like nice knowing that like there are people going through the same thing as you. Something that I like got, I think I saw it probably like on TikTok or like somewhere random. It's actually like these like affirmation cards, and they're like really funky. And I don't know, they're just really funny, and it's like 50 affirmation cards to help you help yourself without the self-helpiness, and they're just like really funny cards. If you're ever having like a bad day, just like pull one out of the deck, and it's like really fun to read. So I think just like little things like that help you kind of reset. And then obviously again, spending time with friends, like playing spike ball. I recently learned how to play like the ukulele and stuff like that, so just finding time for yourself.
Yeah, I think I can kind of echo most of what everyone has said here, with the exception of I've never had a massage booked for me before. That is so sweet. I guess the piece I'd add on is prioritizing personal health. I think it's really easy to get super caught up. Like I've forgotten to eat some days, which sounds ridiculous, but it does happen. You're jumping from, I think Eileen before this, so would have been scrambling to get her dinner down, but kind of creating space to make sure you're eating healthy and you're also able to exercise and sleep well.
Stephanie, give me your calendar.
The massage is very sweet. And a theme that's kind of brought up is finding that balance and priority. And for those of you who have had to balance both school and your venture, how have you managed to find that balance there?
Badly. It's pretty bad. Like honestly, like I cannot recommend this like at all to anybody. Like it sounds fun in concept, and you're like, oh yeah, I can totally schedule around it. Like reality is you can't. There's a lot of times where I would just like leave my lecture hall to take a call and be like, sorry, have to go. And they'd be like, why? I'd just be like, have to go. and that's because like the farmers would just call you at like any time, you know, and you have to pick up. Yeah, it's just knowing your boundaries and also knowing when to say no to things, I think is really important if you're doing like both school and work. And also like setting like time for yourself to do school as well. Like I would always kind of just rather do like my startup and like other work other than school. I don't know, maybe it's different at Waterloo, but I hate the classes here. So it's just making sure that you actually get the stuff you need done.
I can jump in. I think the saying no is super important, and kind of related to that, I think prioritization is huge. I made the not great decision at one point earlier on. Thankfully, I'm able to co-jump full time right now. But I had interned at Uber as a software engineer and was fortunate enough to get that internship extended into school. So I was doing a full-time load of engineering courses, as well as the Uber internship full time. And that's when co-jump really started getting going. So my schedule was a little bit of a nightmare. And kind of the only way I was really able to get through that time was just being extremely disciplined about priorities, especially when it came to the startup. You've got 100 things to do. You only have time to maybe do 2 of them. What are the 2 you're going to do? And really defining what done looks like.
I would say as well, like, Stephanie, you stole exactly what I was going to say, but that's okay. I was going to say also just having people in these different areas of your life kind of holding you accountable. So I would say the same, that I would say yes to a lot of things. Like a friend's like, oh yeah, my friend cousin has a baby shower. Do you want to come? I'm like, oh sure, I don't want to be a bad friend. But it's like, you don't know this baby. Who's this friend? Like, why am I even going to this thing? But more so just being able to navigate and having those people say, oh wait, Eileen, like you should be, like, this is where you want to focus on. You said that you want to get these 3 things done within these 4 months. Like, how is that going? And really keeping you on track. That's been really helpful for me. Also, just, yeah, similar to what everyone's been saying with boundaries, just find that I think I can do, I can't, and I don't want to get to the point of burnout all the time. So no one here has said it's easy. People have even said, like, you know, oh, don't even follow my example. But I would say just being able to have people holding me accountable, knowing my boundaries, and being aware of my capacity, but then also just really understanding that things are still going to hit the fan, and you just take it one at a time. And I love those affirmation cards. Like, I get it on Amazon, I'll order them. But that's pretty much just echoing literally what everyone else has said. But yeah, work-life balance, I don't know if that really exists, but more so just finding a way to fit in all the aspects to benefit your life, I think, is what we all seem to be doing here.
Yeah, and honestly, oh, sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
So to ask an add-on question there, you mentioned having people hold you accountable. That was definitely something I struggled with. I'd be curious, what was your approach to it?
Yeah, so one thing that I did is that I sought out for a mentor that we meet once every quarter. So, not to put more pressure on yourself, but kind of to say, oh, hey, like, this is kind of what I'm up to. And they have a very outside lens. They're not in the nitty gritty, but they see you every I guess, every four times a year. That has helped me because they're really overview of things that I'm doing. And I say, hey, I want to bring on this team member, and I want to get involved in this extracurricular. And I also want to be very present for my family during this time period. That's kind of what I've been doing with a mentor. Also, some of my friends, like, just like, oh, if I'm responding to you at midnight, like, please tell me to stop or something like that, has been the little things. But it works different for each person, because sometimes having accountability can add more pressure that makes you more stressed. So it just depends on you. But thanks for asking, Stephanie.
Yeah, and I guess, like, building on that, again, echoing everything there, the mentorship piece thing I think is really important, because yeah, even though you're focusing a lot of time and effort towards like other sources, so like school or your startup, you also have to focus on time to do things that, like, will advance you, or kind of work towards like some of your own personal goals. I think, like, especially with the whole like school and startup balance, online school has actually been like a blessing and a curse, in a sense that, like, now that things are online, like, I schedule meetings like between classes and it's like fine. But yeah, I think just like what Stephanie and some of the others said, like, prioritization is really important. So there are going to be times where we have to decide, like, okay, do I skip this like lecture, or do I like go into this meeting? But at the end of the day, as long as you're getting what you need to get done and you're passing, then it's fine.
I kind of want to touch on that mentorship piece again. How do you find mentorship as a founder?
bad ones are just terrible, and then good ones are rare but amazing. Yeah. I had one guy take me in after like 20 like failed mentors, and like my co-founder really likes the idea of mentorship, but then I always thought it was kind of useless because no one really knew the space, and like I sometimes felt like we knew more than them, and I was like, why are we even talking to them when they can't even tell us, you know, how long a carrot lasts for? And then we found this dude who literally ran like a produce like warehouse in like Vancouver, and then he ended up taking us in because he liked that we were so young and the produce industry is so like ancient. And now we operate out of his warehouse. And like even today, he was texting me. I started Lettuce Club at McGill, which is like a speed eating lettuce thing. You guys have it at Waterloo too. And
We
then
do have it.
yeah, he texted me and he was like, "So this is how you eat an entire head of lettuce," and like someone like that is like one in a million. But like the amount of value that he brings and the amount of times he tells me to get like my head out of my ass, like it's just amazing.
How did you meet this mentor?
It was a good question. Like a friend of a friend of a friend. Like a friend knew a guy who like handled like 30% of like the avocado like imports in like Vancouver, which is like pretty wild. And then he was like, "Oh, yo, I know someone with a warehouse. You guys want to talk to him?" And he just added him to the call. Like it was literally like a phone call too, and then just hung up. And then that's how we met him.
I can jump in. I'd say to answer your question very directly, the best way to find a mentor is to ask. The community in Waterloo and even abroad is so incredibly supportive. I have never had someone tell me, "No, I don't have 15 minutes to chat with you." Everyone's very, very happy to hop on a call, like listen to your challenges and give you advice. I think to kind of extend on Ariel's point about that, there is definitely good advice and there's some potentially questionable advice. I found it's always helpful to try to understand why they're coming from, even if they might not understand your space as well. Generally, they've got a unique perspective, and you can accept that. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. So the term advisor whiplash is heard a lot in the startup world, and if you are an entrepreneur, you've experienced it. So it's kind of you'll get a lot of different opinions, and I think the best way to do it is like take as many as you can efficiently, and then just make your decision, and kind of hold to that decision.
Yeah, and I think like advice for people as well, who struggle to ask for mentorship. Because I know for me in the beginning, like I was kind of shy to do that because I was like, oh, like I'm a student, like this person has like so much experience. I think focusing just on like not even like mentorship, but just building relationships in general, because entrepreneurship at the end of the day is building relationships, whether that's with your team, like people who fund you, your customers, like there's just so many different types of relationships out there, that it is possible that through the people that you're speaking to, one of them could end up being a mentor or someone that you see in that light. I think it's hard sometimes, especially if you don't know what exactly you're looking for in a mentor. But if you just focus on having strong relationships with people, I think that way it'll be a lot easier for you to understand the type of people that you gel well with and the type of people who you would feel comfortable asking, to meet you more frequently.
Yeah, and even just I guess hopping on that, with regards to just mentors and mentorship, I think it's really important if you find someone who you're not afraid to tell like the bad stories with when something's not going well. Um, it shouldn't be like you're trying to always impress this person. It should be okay, like, hey, can I just pick your brain on a few things? What do you think of this? Things are not going well. Like, what did you do? Or have you gone through this experience? Someone you can just talk candidly with. I think yes, there is that mentor mentee relationship, but what Mylene said, like, yeah, just someone that you find and you network with and you're just building genuine relationship with them. I think that's the best way. I know that's how I go about things. When it's more so people I'm quote unquote trying to impress, then when things go wrong, you're nervous, you don't want to tell them things, you kind of sugarcoat things, which defeats the whole purpose of having a mentor to really just share the candid moments of being a student, having a startup, just being a person in the entrepreneur space. I think it's really important.
I was curious, Eileen, before we go forward, you mentioned relationship building. How do you approach building when you, like, from the initial message you send out to a mentor to the first call? How do you build strong relationships with them?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've obviously like been leveraging a lot as a student is the fact that like I can leverage the fact that I'm a student. So basically, like going up to any industry professional and saying like, "Hey, like I'm a student currently studying at the University of Waterloo, blah blah blah. Would love to learn more about like X Y Z." I think again, like you said, most people will respond, or even if they don't, like it doesn't matter. Just like reach out to more people and see what happens. So I think like leveraging that fact and like leading with a lot of authenticity, like especially I think the one thing that made it really easy for me early on with regards to like sending messages and things like that, is actually just like being open about like my story or things like that. I'm not saying like send your life story in an email, but if you don't talk like salesy and if you're saying stuff that is legitimate, like you're not making things up and you people can tell that you're excited and passionate about something in a message, then people will be excited as well. They're going to want to respond and things like that. I think also like once you do get in the call or the conversation with that person, also trying to find ways that maybe you can help them. I know like as a student sometimes it can feel like you don't have much to offer to them, but even just thinking of like, if there's ever anything that I can do to help you, just like slipping that in at the end of the call, just makes people feel like you also care about the relationship with them. It's not just them adding value to you, but it's also you trying to give that back as well. So being really intentional about that.
I'm also a little curious about that, like relationship building and reaching out. At what point in the venture journey did you start doing that? So was it like super early on when you were still ideating, or was it more into when you had decided you wanted to pursue this more seriously? And that's a question for everyone as well.
I think like all the time, you're just always talking to people from the start till the end, like customer discovery or just like talking to your users or prospective users, like never really stops. Like it's just an ongoing thing that you kind of have to get used to. And I don't know, that's not like a really helpful answer, but yeah, it's just something that's like continuous.
I think there's like no harm in like talking to as many people as you can. Like there's literally like there's no downside, only upside and some like neutral.
Makes sense. Yeah. And kind of in the train of thought of like the different stages of your journey, at what point for your projects did you decide that this is it? I'm going to make this a business. I'm going to make this a venture, and like pursue it more steadily.
For me, I would say I just didn't want to regret anything. I didn't want to, Lord willing, I live long. I didn't want to look back and say, oh, like what could have happened if I just did this and put all my effort into it. So kind of the fear of missing out on not doing something that I'm passionate about was where I just said, okay, let's try and do Be Blended full time. But then also just feedback from a lot of people. I found that when you tell your story and you're this human attached to this startup, people are really intrigued and want to know more about, what's going on behind the founder. I was asked just recently, like, oh, why Be Blended? Like, these are the questions that people are intrigued about. And through that, community is built. And so kind of was like, I don't want to let the community down. I don't want to have FOMO. So that's kind of why I decided to, do Be Blended full time. But then also I know that if I'm confident that I won't fail, but if it did, then I would say at least I tried. At least I tried.
Super cool. I totally agree with the passion piece there. It's hard to pick a point in time to say like that's when I decided this is the thing, because I'd say it really evolved over time. It truly was kind of a personal technical passion project. I completely over-architected the MVP of CodeGem, like ridiculously so. Several of my founder friends make fun of me. But as it kind of kept going, I'd say the point in time when I really made the choice was during that internship with Uber. I was I was at school and we had the option for your next co-op. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I can return to Uber, I can go try to go for a different company, or I can work on CoGEM. And I decided to do CoGEM, and then shortly following, that's when I got the Teal Fellowship, and that was kind of like further enforcing, not only was I going to do it for a co-op, but I was going to take a step out of school to do it. And it was funny when I first got it. I remember I was talking to one of the professors at school, kind of asking like, how do I drop out of school, basically. And he was trying to convince me to. I won't name him, but he was like, you got to, like, this is an opportunity, you got to take it. I was like, I'm not asking if I should, I'm asking how do I? Like, the decision was made. So it was hard to say when it became that decisive, but it was over time for sure.
I guess like on a similar note, I think the time around like Stephanie deciding to take it more seriously was like kind of around the same time as me, since we actually met through like Waterloo has this thing called an enterprise co-op, and basically like you can take a full co-op term off to like work on your venture. So for me, I think like deciding to commit commit full time to my startup for the 4 months instead of taking a traditional work term, and I actually did that again this past co-op term in the summer. I think that's the reason that I did that in the first place was because, again, similar to what Stephanie said, there's never a perfect time. You kind of have to put in the effort and kind of see what happens. And I think myself and my co-founder, that's kind of been our attitude going into this, is like, we're both still young. Even if we fail, it's fine. Like, it's like we still have our whole like life ahead of us, essentially. So I think a part of it was that. And then another thing too is like, I have always wanted to get into product management and things like that. And what better way to get those skills than to do it yourself and kind of like be there in the process and actually be able to ship a product. So I think that was probably that, like, I guess the experience for me in the situation there.
And I guess for me, it's like I literally saw the problem right in front of me. Like going to like my first like warehouse, there's like a giant street in Vancouver where all of like it's a terminal, and like seeing all the stuff that would just get thrown out every single day. Like, sure, if I didn't do it, someone else may have done it, but like it's been like decades and no one has tried touching it. So if not me, then who, And like I just like when it comes to like things like this, like knowing that this is like happening in the background and nobody's like noticing, like I had to do it, and that's why I'm full sending it.
Nice. Yeah, very, very touching. And very inspiring as well. So kind of to wrap up the night, the last question is, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself when you first started thinking about entrepreneurship? And do you have any advice specifically for younger women?
I'll take this one first then. If I could tell myself like at the very beginning, I was like teetering with the idea, and just tell myself to just do it. Like, honestly, I don't know why I spent so long just like thinking about like the whole idea. Like, it was just like, it's slow and stable. Like, all my friends, I'm in like a business program. All my friends are going to banking consulting. I felt like very like out of it. But like, who cares? Like, it's not something that like I wanted to do. I knew it. This is like what I like in my heart. Like, you just kind of know. And I just wish I had done it sooner, and talked to more people. One piece of advice is like, the community is so good. Like, it is impeccable. Like, chef's kiss. Like, every single one of these girls are like, wow, fire. Like, there's no shortage of amazing people in this world. And like, you can just go up and just like tap them on the shoulder and be like, what up? And like, you'll learn so much more from other people than you will from classes.
I would say for me, something that I would probably tell myself, or anyone even starting off, is that it's not a race. Like, as a founder, you really do have to set like the pace for yourself. And it can really feel like, especially when like it's your first time jumping into an idea, like you have all this adrenaline and you're just like, oh my God, I have to like get everything done now. But that's basically like asking for burnout. I think just like allowing yourself to slow down a little bit and realize like, yes, even if there are competitors in this space, like your main concern should be how you add value and how you differentiate, and not so much about like what people around you are doing or what the competitors are doing. So knowing that, as a founder, you have to set your own pace and you don't always have to be sprinting. Like, it is more of a marathon anyways. I think that's one thing. And then I think another thing that a mentor had actually told me as well, and I think this will be more relevant, especially as we progress in our careers, is to always uplift other women along the way. So, like, as you continue on your journey, obviously there are some crazy stats out there about like female entrepreneurs or the amount of women founders who get funded. And I think it's just so important to continue to, again, like foster these relationships and ensure that like if you come across opportunities or ways to support other women or even other like individuals around you, go do that, because it makes a really big difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'd also say for myself, even just looking back, starting off as a solo founder versus now having a team, definitely I would tell myself to not think I can do it all by myself. When you have an idea and you're holding it dear to your heart, and you're like, oh, like, what can I do? How many things can I juggle? Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should. And you should definitely reach out because people do want to help. So I would say that. So number one, don't think you can do it by yourself. Reach out to people and build a community and team that can help you. And then number two, if you, for example, did do that and you reached out and not everyone's interested, just keep doing pitch competitions, apply to funding, look into your university or college, wherever it is, and then hire a freelancer as soon as possible and just get something up and running. Because I think what I did is I dwelled and kept talking and thought that I had to like hire some like super software engineering person to just come and build everything out, but that's not the case. That's not how things start off. It's in bits and pieces, especially if you're not as technical. And so I learned, go for it. Keep putting yourself out there, even if it is just you. But if you can get more people, don't feel like you have to do things by yourself.
I completely agree with that. I'd also say kind of what I touched before, prioritization. If I could go back in time, I think I'd slap myself a few times across the hand about my poor choice in priorities. So kind of, I think to be a bit more tangible, it's kind of learning about what makes a successful startup. So talking to customers, making and being more diligent about where I was putting my time. And then I guess kind of more female specific advice, something that took me a pretty long time to develop was self-confidence. Especially I think coming from my experience was working as a software engineering team. So I'd sometimes come in and I'd always feel like I had something to prove and I had to prove to others. And I hadn't proved it to myself. So I think going backwards, it's kind of like understanding like you are smart, you deserve to be where you are, and not worrying. It doesn't matter if someone takes a look at you and assumes you're a designer, not a back-end software engineer. Who cares? Like, they'll figure it out.
Thank you so much for sharing such inspiring stories to everyone. And I think that's all for the night. So thank you so much again for all of our panelists for joining us today. Thank you, the audience, for joining us. I hope you all learned something new and learned more about women in entrepreneurship.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.